We all get urges once in a while, but what do you do when your impulses take over your life and have you spiraling out of control?
Au fur et à mesure que le temps passera, peut-être ça ira.
Welcome to Talk It Out from the BBC Life Clinic, where every week we tackle health taboos across Africa. My name is Sharon Mashira, and today we discuss a condition that's only whispered about in Africa. In fact, it's so heavily stigmatized here that people who have this problem are labeled immoral, and no one really considers that in some cases there could be an underlying mental health problem. It's also perceived to primarily be a male problem, but as we'll come to find out later in the program, it affects women in equal measure. So let's head over to Ivory Coast, where we meet 27-year-old Herval, who's been living with this secret for many years and has finally decided to talk it out.
Je m'appelle Herval et j'ai un secret. Ils doivent être forts en fait, mentalement, physiquement. Ça peut te détruire si tu ne sais pas que c'est ça. Je vais lui révéler ce secret parce que j'ai vraiment confiance en lui. Et je crois qu'il ne peut pas me trahir pour ça. J'ai 27 ans et j'ai l'addiction sexuelle. La danse, pour moi, c'est ma vie, au fait. C'est ma vie, j'aime la danse et puis je veux vraiment affronter les meilleurs danseurs du monde. Les problèmes qui s'opposent sur mon addiction sexuelle, ça m'empêche d'atteindre mon but. Ça m'empêche à pouvoir chercher du travail parce que ça me rend paresseux, ça ne me pousse pas à avancer. On peut dire que ça me détruit à petit feu. C'est un truc qui me traumatise un peu. Je fais un rêve que je suis en train de faire l'amour avec des filles. Et le lendemain du jour, soit le matin quand je me réveille, je suis excité, forcé, je dois faire ce que j'ai eu à faire dans mon rêve. Mais je crois que ça n'a pas arrivé dans la centaine. Le nombre de filles que je suis sorti en une seule journée, ça peut arriver à 5. Parce que je me rappelle bien le matin, à midi, à 15h, 20h, et il y a une qui est venue passer la nuit avec moi. Des relations sérieuses, oui, j'en ai. J'ai déjà eu au moins 4 à 5 relations. Mais quand elle découvre que je la trompe, elle me laisse. J'ai déjà eu plein de problèmes. J'ai eu une maladie, c'est comme la gonocoxie, mais c'est pas la gonocoxie, c'est chopis. Concernant de l'aide, je n'ai jamais eu de l'aide. Et j'ai jamais en parlé à quelqu'un.
Il a un sens du partage. Il est jovial, c'est-à-dire il est toujours joyeux. Et puis souvent aussi, il s'éclipse souvent. Mais ça, cela, il n'a jamais compris. On peut être en train de causer, il est sur son téléphone, et tout d'un coup, il dit, bon les gars, j'arrive, il revient. Mais lorsqu'il dit il revient, c'est peut-être demain, on va le revoir encore. On n'a aucune idée du secret qu'il va me partager. Aucune idée.
Je vais là-bas. Mais depuis moi, je cherchais à te voir, c'était pour te parler au fait. Parce que à longtemps, on se connaît, tu sais. Et puis, j'ai un petit secret à te révéler.
Un petit secret.
Je sais pas comment t'informer, comment te dire ça, mais...
Tu sais que c'est c'est pas maintenant qu'on se connaît. Donc, il y a une première fois à toute chose. Donc, je suis disposé à t'écouter.
Je voulais pas te dire ça, mais vu que j'ai vraiment confiance en toi, je veux vraiment t'informer de ce qui se passe avec moi. Oui. Bon, à vrai dire...
Mets-toi à l'aise, hein. Mets-toi à l'aise. Tu sais que je suis ton ami.
Je suis un addict sexuel, en fait. Donc, je ne sais pas si tu l'as constaté, tu as su.
Mais excuse-moi de te demander, mais comment c'est arrivé? Comment...
Bon, moi-même, je ne sais pas comment, parce que c'est un truc, ça arrive comme ça. Je ne sais pas.
Donc, pendant tout ce temps où tu étais sur ton téléphone et tu partais, à chaque fois tu nous laissais.
C'est plus aller dans les rendez-vous avec des filles et tout, mais bon, c'est en train de me détruire à petit feu. Parce que le niveau que j'avais et le niveau actuel, c'est pas la même chose en fait.
C'est raffermi.
Ça a diminué en fait, ça a vraiment diminué. Et tu connais mes rêves, tu connais mes ambitions.
Mais dans un premier temps, est-ce que toi-même tu veux arrêter?
Ce que tu viens de dire, c'est ce qui est dans ma tête en fait. D'arrêter. Je veux bien arrêter. Mais c'est plus fort que moi. Je ne sais pas comment, par où commencer. Je ne sais pas qui peut me venir en aide. Et c'est un peu de ça, d'approcher peut-être les docteurs, peut-être les psychologues, peut-être les gens qui s'y connaissent bien à la chose.
Je te vois souffrir en tant qu'ami. Sincèrement, ça me fait mal. Parce que l'amitié, c'est aussi se donner des conseils. Tu ne peux pas être dans un problème. Et puis moi, en tant qu'un ami, il va t'abandonner, il va te laisser comme ça. Non. L'amitié, c'est cela. Ça englobe tout cela. Au fur et à mesure que le temps passera, peut-être ça ira. En tout cas, frère, ça ira. Le fait qu'il m'ait révélé ce secret, c'est, selon moi, un premier pas vers une guérison possible. Car le problème, il est psychologique. Mais s'il a pris son courage à deux mains pour venir vers moi, me révéler ce secret, c'est que sincèrement, il a envie d'être aidé. Quelles que soient les circonstances qui arriveront, quel que soit le temps qui passera, du moment qu'aujourd'hui, il a pris son courage à deux mains pour me révéler ce secret, moi, en tant que son ami, je serai là pour le soutenir.
Après avoir révélé mon secret à mon meilleur ami, je me sens à l'aise, je me sens libéré au fait, libéré par ce secret. C'est un truc que je gardais vraiment il y a tellement longtemps et je voulais pas que n'importe qui puisse savoir. Mais vu qu'aujourd'hui j'ai dévoilé, donc je me sens à l'aise.
Oh, it's great to see how supportive his friend was when he heard this story. And that's what we encourage here on Talk It Out. Later on in the program, we'll share support information for you or someone that you know who may be affected by what we're discussing today. Most of us are aware of drug and alcohol addictions, but not many are well acquainted with addiction to an activity rather than a substance. Today, we talk about sexual addiction, a condition in which a person can't manage their sexual behavior. In studio to share their personal struggles with compulsive sexual activities are Ruth Jagi and decorated news presenter Johnson Mwakazi. I think I'll start with you, Johnson, because as you were watching that clip, I could see you nodding your head. What is going through your mind?
Well, the reality is everyone is battling something that the other person cannot see. And sometimes the lie is to think that we are all alone. I remember even with my experience, the moment I shared my struggles, then the person I shared to actually also came out and said, I'm also struggling. So together we were able to find a common bond and a place to start from in terms of providing solutions. And you heard his friend say, you know what? I mean, friends are here to provide solutions.
Right. What about you, Ruth? What is going through your mind?
It took me back to the time I had to share my secret, and wow, he was very courageous. I wasn't. I gave someone a journal to read from here to here, and then I went and hid. I could not face. I didn't have the courage to tell them face to face what I was struggling with.
And Mwakazi, just back to you, for those who may not be familiar with your struggle, what exactly were you struggling with?
Well, there was pornography, there was masturbation, and over time, of course, even listening to his story, I realized he's also talking about how his dancing skills began to go down. On my side, when I was presented with the fact of who I was, especially in terms of what God created me to be, anytime I found myself in that situation, I felt a sense of guilt and shame. But over time, I realized that feeling is also a good feeling.
Really? The feeling of guilt and shame?
To some extent.
Right.
And for me, that helped me to say, you know what, I need to talk to somebody.
Wow. What about you, Ruth? What exactly were you battling with? Was it similar to his experience?
Yes, it was. It was both pornography and masturbation. And for me, as a woman, it was very shaming, and I was so sure I was abnormal, because I'd never heard of another woman who struggled with sex addiction of my kind, of any kind. I mean, society was like, this is a man problem.
What led you to look at pornography to begin with?
It came from being sexually abused as a child, and then never speaking about it, and then going to high school and learning to hide in romance books. And then it just escalated from there. At one point, I was like, now I want to see what really happens. And then I got a video, and then I got another one, and then I got another one, and I was out of control.
What about you, Mwakazi? What would you say was at the height of your addiction? What was the consumption?
The genesis of it, a friend of mine actually told me, Johnson, have you ever tried to do this? And I thought, what are you talking about? Then I went and tried it, and it was a big shock. Then another friend of mine introduced me to pornography. So that's primary school. Then I get to secondary school. Then there is, of course, time spent in class. But then after my classes, there was a library in town. And when I went there, boom, guess what? All these cartoons and the drawings, I got back again. And so I would say the height of it came to that place where, yes, I was serving as a Christian in church, and I could literally have the Bible there and say, oh, I'm not going to do this, and then all of a sudden I found myself doing it, and then I go like, what is this? So I would say that was the height of it. Then I realized, if the Bible can be in front of me and I still find myself doing this, there's a big problem.
Right. Did you ever feel better after you've watched pornography?
You see, that's the lie. When you are at 8, because there's this obsession to watch. It's almost like you must do. There's this driving force that is hard to explain.
Is that the same, or I can see you nodding?
Absolutely. When you're faced with that desire, you feel, I need to get this sorted out.
Right.
The big lie comes in once you are done with it, then you realize it's absolute emptiness. And you feel a sense of guilt and shame. I don't know about you, but that's the sense of it. You go like, if I was just given time to change what I just did, possibly I would be a better person.
We'll go for a short break for now, but when we come back, we'll be joined by Kosi Giane, a clinical psychologist who will give us a better understanding of this condition. Keep it, talk it out. And a warm welcome back to Talk It Out, where we've been talking about compulsive sexual behavior. Before the break, we watched a report that gave us more information about this particular addiction. And to help us further understand that report, we're now joined by Kosi Giane, a clinical psychologist from South Africa. Welcome, Kosi.
Great to be here.
So I think my first question would be, is this really an addiction? Because some people, even here at our production meeting, were not fully convinced. And even with Hervel in the video we watched earlier, he didn't really know where to go because you don't really know what is my problem.
Sure. And the crux of the issue about it is that it crosses a very normal part of us. We are sexual human beings. That's part of our endowment. It's part of what defines us as human beings. It's part of our evolutionary history, and we are here because of it. You know, and so the addiction, unlike a simple addiction to substances where it's clearly defined as something external to us, this is part of us. And I guess what makes it so confusing is where is the boundary?
Right, exactly.
To it, you know. And if we go back to the root word, is about addiction, you know. So a critical defining feature of addiction is excess. So there's a normal scope of. But again, normal is also, you know, where's the line? And that's part of the confusion. But we generally will say when it begins to affect, firstly, when you get the compulsive thoughts, and I think they've alluded to that, when it just preoccupies you so incessantly that even you feel helpless to the thought forms that are coursing through you. So, and secondly is the compulsive behavior. The urge, the irresistible urge and need to do this. There's no way out of it. And then thirdly, it is looking at how it is impacting your life, yourself as a social being, just as a person, but also your social life, your professional life, and all other spheres of life.
How do you then stop yourself?
The recovery is not an event, even though there needs to be an event, a point that says, this is it,
much,
you know, but it's a journey. And it involves, that's why, you know, with addiction, it's work in progress all the time. And that is why people keep track of, I am so many days sober, or I have not done this so many days, because it is a conscious decision that they need to make every day.
Do you still make that decision every day, or do you feel that you've moved past it?
No, personally, I literally have to make a decision every single day, because you're really saying this addiction, this satisfying of this feeling is just going to take me about 5 minutes, max. But I have a whole lifetime. I have children, I have grandchildren. So every moment I'm engaging this, I need to be absolutely aware. Am I confident enough to do this and look straight into the eyes of my grandchildren and tell them, when I was doing this, I was thinking about you. Boom, it changes something.
The important thing, and this is the challenge with this particular addiction, is that sex is part of our normal life. And so it's very difficult to draw that line. So it has to be something that's conscious, because it can very easily tip over. Whereas, for example, if you're a drug addict, it's something you have to go and get. So if you don't get that, you don't get into,
Right.
But with this, it's part of the normal life.
How important is it to give that support to people that could be battling this condition?
We are social, relational beings. Part of our strength rests in being able to lean on other people for whatever challenge that we experience. And it may not be the same person for the same thing, because, for specific reasons, there were people that you chose to say, this is the one that I will tell this to. And so we have that felt sense of who can I entrust with this burden to help me carry this burden. So it's always important to have that person who is your corner, your go-to corner. Nature abhors a vacuum. So when you create a vacuum, that's when it seizes that opportunity. So it is about how can you find constructive ways to use your time so that there isn't time to
have
this.
That craving. And he also talked about sort of feeling that guilt, right? So how do you move past the guilt and share this secret with somebody else?
A critical part of getting through the guilt is self-forgiveness. Self-forgiveness, because, forgiveness is a whole topic of discussion on its own. And sometimes it may be easier to forgive someone else than to forgive ourselves.
Can you seek medical help beyond faith, beyond... what is the
Well, in this
way
case,
forward?
from a psychological point of view, what we would want to help people deal with is the anxiety. And so the best that we would do is to look at issues around depression, for example, and which coexists very often with anxiety. And so from a psychiatric point of view, that would be the medical side. But generally, it's more a psychological journey.
Wow, that was powerful. I could listen to her all day. And I think we can all agree that was quite informative, and support seems to be a common element that they have all highlighted. So if you or someone that you know has been affected by what we're discussing here today, here are some tips on how to handle that.
As you can imagine, this is probably one of the most difficult addictions to confess. So for starters, avoid being judgmental and try relating to the person's issues instead. And then with empathy, talk to them, assess whether they are in denial, and help them accept their situation. This is because recovery is difficult without first admitting to the problem. With acceptance, it becomes easy to seek professional help or join a support group, and it is a crucial step on the path to healing. To help people with sex addiction, therapists first have to find out a person's triggers for sexually destructive behavior. Sometimes they use psychotherapy, a treatment approach that helps uncover childhood issues that may have led to sex addiction in adulthood. Doctors often prescribe mood stabilizers and other medication that would decrease compulsive sexual urges.
Now, let's get back to our chat with John, Ruth, and Kosi, who earlier on we were sharing about sexual impulses. So I think, Johnson, my next question would be to you. Who played a monumental role in terms of support in your journey towards recovery?
This was my great mentor and pastor who introduced me to a journey of really understanding my value. And it sort of gave birth to an understanding that I have a purpose on this earth. And day by day, when I look at my children, I realize it's not just about me, it's about them, it's about their children. And ultimately, even as a country, even as Africa, imagine if all the young people were engaged in something and they saw themselves as part of the development of Africa. Come on, we can change the continent.
And for me, I felt so much support from my friends, and they carried me through so much. More so, I think I made a vow to God to, not I think I did, that if He healed me, I would help others like me. And God corrects.
Kosi, for people out there that are sort of battling with this and are afraid to come out and to talk it out, what would you say to them?
The first step in owning your power and taking your power back from this entity that you can't even name, isn't it a bit ridiculous that you're scared of what? Of what?
Yeah.
That can do what to you without your permission? You know, so it is about stepping up to and saying, I need to claim this. And I think the acronym of fear, it becomes appropriate in this sense, in that it says it's about face everything and rise. And it is in facing it, only in facing it, that you can rise, because you've been on the run and look where it's gotten you. So try something else. Face it and rise. That's the only way out. It's through it, not around it.
I think she wrapped it up best for us. Today's program was about a sexual addiction, a condition that can leave an individual with intense feelings of guilt and low self-esteem. We've come to the end of this program, but the conversation shouldn't end here. Let's keep it going at home, among our friends, and even online. Tweet us at BBC Africa using the hashtag #TalkItOut. My name is Sharon Mashira, and until next week, it's bye for now.